You ready to go?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just going live.
That's good. All right.
So we'll just defer to. Yeah.
Are we good, Nikita?
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Look at that. Okay, so just to confirm again, we're streaming?
We are streaming.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'd call the meeting to order. I've got 9:33. And I'll just let everybody know in advance that had a bit of a eventful morning. I had to take my father-in-law to the UVA hospital for surgery, so he and I were on the road at just shortly before 3 o'clock. And I just got back, so yeah, if I go a little foggy, then that's what I'll blame it on.
Day's already half over.
Yeah,
Is he
exactly.
okay?
Pardon?
Is he okay?
Yeah, it's a scheduled surgery, so long one though, 16 hours.
Jeez.
Okay, so meeting is called to order. If there's nothing out of order with the agenda, I'd ask for a motion to adopt. Thanks, Devin.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Motion is made. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, and then we'll go into the adoption of the minutes from November 10th. Everybody had a chance to have a look at that. Anything out of order? Motion from Dave?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes of the November 10th, 2021 meeting as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the minutes from November 29th. Same thing. Everybody had a chance to have a look. Call for motion, Jeremy. Thank you.
Motion to adopt the minutes from the special council meeting November 29th, 2021.
All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks. Okay, sorry, just I got a little bit of a technical issue. I thought I was logged in and I could see my agenda, but I cannot see the supporting documents. So I'm just going to need a minute here to get hooked up. So, council and admin, I'm having to run a diagnostics check, so I think I can proceed through while this is running. So we'll move on to 5.1 bylaw 571-21, the 3 road allowance closures at the Whitecourt Airport. The map indicates where those roads are, and if I could just ask admin,
Andre's the presenter.
sure, just to give us an overview again of why we're closing those roads.
Your worship, members of council, an RFP was brought forward to council in July 2012 regarding the road closures at the airport. They are designated as roadways, although they are on air side of the airport, which is not the proper designation of those 3 parcels. Given that they are classified as roadways, means there's public access, so essentially anybody can go on those parcels with their vehicles. So that's why the RFP was brought forward to close those 3 parcels. There was a public hearing held, regular council of August 17th. And the bylaw was given first reading to close those 3 parcels. Once the closure is complete, they will be redesignated. And so the recommendation is that council gives second reading that bylaw 571-21, closing the 3 road allowances at the White Court Airport, southeast half section 31, Township 59, Range Road 12, west of the 5th Meridian. And then council gives third reading to bylaw 571-21, closing the 3 road allowances at the White Court Airport, south half section 31, Township 59, Range Road 12, west of the 5th Meridian.
Thanks, Henry. Question?
Through the chair to Mr. Bouchon, what will they be redesignated as? Like, is there a plan for those sections of road?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilhelm, they will be eventually redesignated as taxiways.
Make a motion that council gives second reading to bylaw 571-21, closing the 3 road allowances at the White Court Airport, south half section 31, Township 59, Range 12, west of the 5th Meridian.
Anybody want to speak to the motion? David?
Just for clarification, it says south half section on here. Andre, when you read it, you said southeast half section. I'm just wondering if this is supposed to be southeast or if it's just south half section.
I just said south half section.
Okay.
So the motion is, identifies the correct piece then, it is the south half section.
Yes.
Motion's on the floor. Anybody else want to speak to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We're looking for a motion for third reading. Sorry.
I'll move that we give a third reading to the bylaw. 57121.
You need to read the entire thing.
Okay. That council gives third reading to bylaw 57121, closing the 3 road allowances at the White Court Airport, south half of section 31, Township 59, Range 12, west of the 5th Meridian.
Okay, motion on the floor. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we can move on to 5.2, bylaw 578-21 to amend the committee's bylaw 537-19. So this is a governance and priorities committee. I'll just speak to it and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Frank to speak to it. Essentially, what this will allow us to do is create a policies and procedures committee. And as explained in the RFD, the committee would meet once a month and it would have a limited amount of discussion points. I think the RFD shows 4. That's open to discussion. And I believe there would be flexibility within that committee, once it's struck, that if agenda items needed to be added, the council could do that at the time. But the intent is to keep the agenda small and allow for good, fruitful discussion on points that may not be we may not have time to really dive into during a regular meeting. So, Mr. Frank, did you have anything to add to that?
Your worship, members of council, this is the opportunity to amend the committee bylaw to add governance and priorities. We're asking council for first reading on that so that your terms of reference that is attached, that you review that, and if there are any changes to those terms of reference, then we would present them at the next meeting for second and third reading consideration.
So just some questions.
Councilor Wilhelm.
So this one's called governance and priorities, but that's policy and procedures. Same thing, it's just under a different name. Okay. I had assumed that's what it was, but I just want to make sure that she read through it.
Any other questions for administration? Seeing none, if I could have somebody, thank you, motion.
Through the chair, that, make a motion that council gives first reading of bylaw 57821, amendment to committee bylaw 53719.
Motion on the floor. Anybody wish to speak to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to 5.3 then, bylaw 579/21, the operating expenditures borrowing bylaw. This is just a necessary item as required. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Frank, but the MGA requires this bylaw to be in place so that if we did need to use a line of credit, the bylaw is in place to govern that.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll defer to the Director of Corporate Services, Alicia Borbo, to answer that question.
Good morning, Council. Yes, Councilor Dean is correct. This is essentially a housekeeping item, if you will. Nothing is changing within the financial structure of the municipality. As it states in the background, there have been a line of credit in place for the municipality for a number of years. But in 2019, it was raised to $10 million. And one of the conditions of any line of credit with our current lender is that the bylaw must go back to council annually so that there's some assurance that council is aware of everything that's going through, and if there is any monies on the line of credit, that it is being reported to council. So according to, and I attached them in the back page, according to Covenant 4C, that annually by December 31st, a copy of the municipal borrowing bylaw for the upcoming years for the 2022 year would be required to be before council. I've also included a page showing that the available line of credit is $9.9 million, and there's a number of letter of securities or credits, as well as the maximum amount on our county MasterCards that is also included in that. So this is simply financial leadership, wanting to be before council, making sure everyone's aware that we do have the ability to borrow up to $10 million on our line of credit, and that at current time of passing of this bylaw, the line of credit is 100% intact and all is well.
Thank
So
you.
we're reporting today looking for 3 readings if possible.
Sure. If I could just ask a question, please, Ms. Barbeau. You included I don't know, it looks like a bank statement that shows those letters of credit that you had referenced. Can you just explain why we have a letter of credit with the Minister of Finance for $10,000 and then 2 separate ones with the Department of Energy for those small amounts? The MasterCard makes sense to me, but I wasn't sure what those other 3 were.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, there is, I would have to pull the agreements, but there are some agreements. One of them is for recreation property, so we have to put up security so that if we are not leaving the land that we're using intact or as it should be or brought back to current state, then these monies are attached to, would go to the ministry should we not be fulfilling our agreements with them.
And so just further to that, then they obviously reduce, they're taken from that $10 million total then?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions for administration? Be looking for a motion for first reading. Councillor Williams?
Make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 579/21.
Motion on the floor. Anyone wish to speak to it? Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We can proceed to second reading. Councillor Cush.
I'll make a motion council give second reading to bylaw 579/21.
Motion on the floor. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And we'll need a motion to go to third and final. Thank you, Councillor Kulkin.
Yeah, I make a motion that council proceed to the third and final reading of bylaw 579-21.
Motion on the floor. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Call the question. All in favor? And then we need a motion to give third reading. Councillor Kush.
Make a motion the council gives third reading to bylaw 579.21.
Motion on the floor. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, all in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 5.4, bylaw 580-21, meeting procedure bylaw, a consolidation. As I understand it, we made some changes to our meeting procedure bylaw. We had an existing bylaw and we need to consolidate it. Yes.
So we got a delegation at 9:45.
Oh, okay. And we're at 9. Thank you. Okay, so we'll just leave agenda item 5.4 until after the delegation then. So our delegation is here.
Your delegation, your worship, is through Teams and is on the screen in front of you.
Okay, so just looking for a little bit of mechanical advice here. So at this point, I would just recognize the delegation and ask them to speak.
Yeah, your worship, the administration typically gives council a quick background in regards to that and then turns it back over to the chair, and then the chair usually asks the delegation their presentation.
Thank you then. You can proceed.
Go
Hey,
ahead.
your worship, members of council. Administration received a letter from Ms. Dolman, who's the representative of a property located southeast of Blue Ridge. The property is landlocked. However, there is a road allowance that runs off of 658 to their property. It's an undeveloped road allowance. However, there are 2 quarters that have a lease on them, and the lease does not allow for crossing the lease road allowance. Administration, that lease has been in place for 20-plus years. It's renewed annually. Since we received the letter from Ms. Dahlman, we've contacted our solicitors, who pointed out that the current lease is outdated and needs to be reviewed. We will be bringing an RFD back to the January 19th council meeting, identifying the new lease that allows for public access for landlocked properties. Not for all leases, just those that have a landlocked property adjacent to them. Also, we'll be presenting lease rates for road allowances that are comparable to our surrounding neighbors, as the current rate has been in place for approximately 30 years, 20 years also.
Are there any questions for Andre? Yes.
Through the chair to Mr. Bouchon, have you contacted the leaseholder now?
Through Chair Council Prestage, we have not contacted the lease owner yet. We're just in the process of going through the process.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Bouchon. Any other questions for Mr. Bouchon? So at this point then, we could invite the delegation to speak. Can you hear us, Ms. Dolman?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, and we can hear you, so go ahead.
Well, the family, Henry Boschman's family, would like to sell the property NW-8-59-9 W5, but it is a problem with no access. It's making it very difficult to get any interest in this property. A road allowance would solve this problem for my father. I don't really have, I would just like to see some type of an allowance for my dad, because he is, this property is highly taxed in comparison to properties surrounding it. And I don't feel that denying access to this property is fair or reasonable.
Thanks for that. Council, do you have questions for Ms. Dolan? Councillor Williams first.
Thank you for presenting, but the question I have is the problem there's no access currently to get there? Like there's someone's denying it, or is it for the sale? Just how immediate we should actually proceed with something. Is it hindering your sale versus not allowing you in there currently?
I guess it would be both. If I did want to go on the property, there would be no access for it. And from people that have had interest in the property, the fact that there's no way to get to the property
Yep.
makes it very difficult to sell or anything.
Yeah, thank you.
Through the chair, have you been on this road allowance?
Have I been personally? No.
Okay.
There's no, I'm sorry, but like, it would be to grant a road access, correct?
Yeah, just
So
so
if
you're
there
aware,
isn't one,
this is Treat and Muskeg. You're probably not gonna make it through there anyways.
okay,
Like,
but
there's no road to speak of. It is bush and muskeg. So you might get through with an ATV, that's about it, or walking.
okay, but does that mean that it's not possible, are you saying, to have road access?
Through the chair to Mr. Bichon, how does this work on landlocked if they want to build a road down that road allowance?
Through the chair to Council Prestige. So I'll answer it. I'll make just one comment and then I'll answer that question. So the new lease will allow for access over the road allowance, but as far as the rest of the road allowance, it is undeveloped. We would not grant permission to do any work on the road allowance unless it met the county road standards. Property owners are, as per policy, they are allowed to make a request to have the county build the road to the property. The policy does have some criteria that we rate, and then based on the ratings, we make a recommendation. So we do allow to clear trees and whatever on the road allowance, but no work on the road allowance. And you are correct, the east end of that road allowance is a pretty low and wet area. But as far as the county granting access on the road allowance, we don't take that into consideration.
Did that answer your question, Councillor? Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Dolan? Okay, so as I understand it, I don't know if you heard Mr. Bashan, but he had indicated that later in January there will be a proposal for a revised lease agreement for council to view, and at that point we'll either make a decision then, or it'll be referred back to administration to be reworked if necessary. So that'll be our immediate next steps.
Okay, so that's the agreement between the, I guess the landowner on northeast and northwest 7-59-9 W5, are you saying that in January there will be a meeting to discuss their being able to continue having in their agreement no access, is what you're
So,
saying?
I'll speak to it and then I'll turn it back over to Mr. Bashan. But right now, the leaseholder, the grazing leaseholder, also holds a lease on the road allowance. And so the lease that the leaseholder has with the road allowance, that's the lease that our solicitors are telling us is outdated and we need to review. So that section, or that lease that governs the right-of-way will be reviewed, brought back to council, and then we'll have a path forward from there. Does that sound right, Mr. Bishant?
Yes, your worship.
Easy on the worship.
So
Go
it's
ahead.
basically at a standstill until this meeting in January.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions for? Do you have anything else for us then?
No, I kind of thought that this meeting was to decide this at the time, but if I have to wait till January, then that's fine. I imagine it would be another meeting such as this
Correct. Yeah.
that I could, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We appreciate your patience and thanks for your time this morning to shed light on. I did have one last question. Where does your father reside right now?
He is in long-term care in Barhead.
In Barhead. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, and we enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to attend this meeting.
You're most welcome. Okay, so I don't see an RFD asking us to accept that as information.
There is one there.
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Wilhelm,
I'll motion the council accepts the delegation and report on access to Northwest 859-9 west of the 5th as information.
motion on the floor. Anyone wishing to speak to the motion? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to delegation, agenda item 6.2, Robert Stanley presentation. So I'd ask administration to give us an overview of this presentation.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Stanley is in the room present there, yes. So if you ask him to come up to the delegation table, and then Andre and Joan will be leading the presentation.
Okay. So if I could ask Mr. Stanley to come forward. Okay, so at this time then I'd turn it over to Mrs. Slutwick.
Stand and I'm back here. Good morning, council. So this morning we have Mr. Stanley present based on the request that he provided to council. He's looking for council to consider having administration pass his subdivision to date with no more applications or fees. He's asking that the last two time extension fees be refunded to himself. He's asking that pay back for extra construction costs that he incurred due to alleged negligence of county administration. He's asking for no holdback to be held on his road construction for future graveling. And he's asking for the ability to register any lot at any time. Mr. Stanley is in attendance to speak further to the matter. Attached, we've included for council's perusal a timeline of the events. We've also attached administrative comments on some of the statements that were made in the presentation that Mr. Stanley provided. Just a note that administration has been adhering to the policies that council has passed. As well, developers do provide assets to the municipality that take over, and in this instance, would be roads, approaches, essentially a 20 parcel subdivision, or we've had discussion where he'll just do initially 5 parcels. However, again, administration does adhere to the policies that we have in place to ensure that the county does receive a subdivision and road that will not be required to be rebuilt before its life cycle. Again, the Municipal Planning Commission, per Mr. Stanley's request with respect to phasing, did not approve a subdivision that had phase concept to it. So that's why we've been sticking to the 20 parcels. We did have a legal opinion in which they indicated if he chose to do a phased approach, is he could perhaps register the first 5 lots. However, he would have to ensure that all conditions of the original subdivision were met and completed. And then subsequently after that, additional lots that he wished to bring on board would have to go through the subdivision application as of today. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Stanley if I can.
Okay, thanks for being here today. And, oh, you're welcome. And so, yeah, council is here to, is present to hear what you have to say.
Well, I'd like to be able to have a year extension. I had roughly about a week's worth of work to complete on the subdivision. Some of these conditions that are required for me to meet is out of my control due to TRL having to run a main line, a 2-inch line throughout the subdivision. So I have 2 approaches that I had to cut 3 meters off these approaches into the lot, build up to the road surface 2 meters. I left those out because when you ditch witch a main line in, you kind of want to meet up. You don't want to start going over top of approaches when you're only going 36 inches down. So I left those approaches open so they can come around those 2 particular lots and run the main line in. I'm also restricted to TRL. They get so much money back from the government. So they've allocated for me to bring in the main line. I had to pay for 5 lots. I had to determine which lots those gas lines are going to go into and service. I'm having people say, I don't want natural gas on that line. So it's hard for me to kind of dictate and determine if I go in now and say, okay, phase 1, we put natural gas into these 5 lots. People are obligated to hook up to natural gas. The power's been engineered, and I'm waiting for a bill to come in. I'll pay that bill when it arrives for the power. They're requesting maybe wait till spring to put the poles in. This subdivision is kind of unique, I guess, for this area. Most subdivisions in the county has been put in farmers' fields where they're not restricted to a 30-meter right-of-way. I have timber in there 2 feet in the butt plus. So the reason why the Gabion rock is not put on approaches because quite possibly I would have to go in there with equipment, knock those trees down, pull them out onto the side slopes of the road, process them there. And when you're doing that, you're quite possibly dragging trees over top of approaches and or the ends of the culverts that are cut. So having to kind of, restrict yourself in that regard. It can be completed, and I guess I would have to deal with, the Gabion rock being moved or put back into place or whatever. I have to, I've since cut those 2 approaches and built them.
we will have her determine in the spring when TRL decides to run that main gas line around. I may have to dig a portion of those approaches back out so they can get the natural gas into the utility corridor. And put a little bit of topsoil around. The road is fully completed. There's an extra 1,200 tons of 3/4 inch on site stockpiled, along with 800 tons of pit run, a couple of 100 tons of 1.5 inch if it's required to kind of finish off those approaches. You can't just bore under every approach. There's 20 approaches to go around, through, under, whatever. It'll be fully completed next year, weather pending, and hopefully administration, can work with me to, fully complete this and move forward so we can get some tax base out there. My thoughts on the 5 lots, which are lots 1 to 17, 18, and 19 is what the administration, I guess, has recommended that be phase 1. So I would be taxed roughly $500 per lot on phase 1, and then the balance of the subdivision is taxed as a quarter section. If we do that, as I understand that the county has to allocate a lot for a tax base. So if we were to take, say, lots 1 and 2, if somebody wanted to buy lot 15 or 9 or 8 or whatever, we can reallocate that tax base to that other property. So we can start off with phase 1 as such, but if somebody wanted to buy within another phase or a portion thereof of the subdivision, we can transfer title to that lot. So until I sell 5 lots, we can move into phase 2 being up to 10 lots. And but the road is fully completed. And in regards to the holdback, I'm actually out of pocket over $80,000, closer to $150,000, if you take in consideration that I first ordered power and asked to have my subdivision passed back in 2017. The increased cost in natural gas and power has went up 10 to 15%, which now on 20 lots adds another $50,000 to my development. Plus having to tear this road up 4 years running because of the way the county looked at and or determined what they consider deflection on their loaded gravel truck. I have a letter here, and if council or anybody want to put together a group, I can bring to the table all the developers in the area. I have a letter here from a doctor of engineering stating on how deflection is calculated, looked at, analyzed, nuclear tested. I've talked to 5 different engineering firms, and this administration wants a developer to make his road as hard as concrete, 0 deflection, which is virtually impossible. I had the best material building this road is that blue-gray clay. You can't find any better material. I had it analyzed, and it exceeded all standards for engineering for roads. Still, every year, administration failed my road. And so since then, we've had it passed by a proper engineering firm. The way it was done wasn't really right. We can discuss that at a later date, but I think over the next year, if administration would like to work with me and or council would like to work with me and other developers to determine what's the right and wrong way to do all this, I'd be happy to help. And as of today, I've elected an extension for a year to maybe get new policies in place or for both the county, if I'm required to adhere to a set of standards, it should be a set of standards for all, including the county. At past, we all know what road conditions were built like, and with ditches, without ditches, with proper approaches. My subdivision should be used as a standard, I guess, to what is required by all. It's been built to. I've done roads for 35 years here. I actually have a certificate in reclamation and remediation. That's a study of soils. And pretty much all I have to say, I guess. If there's any questions,
Sure. Thanks very much. Council have questions for Mr. Stanley?
I've got a few questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Through the chair to Mr. Stanley. So I've read through all the documentation from both your side and administration side as well. And what I have trouble with a little bit on reconciling the story here, because obviously I haven't been involved with it at all, is you have in your statements a lot of conjecture. So you've talked to 5 firms regarding to how the road's built or that it's up to standards, and yet we have no documentation on the veracity of those comments, right? So you're claiming that administration doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't know how to test the road properly. You've talked to experts on it, but then have not provided us any information on that. Just your word on those conversations.
I have this doctor of engineering, his statement's a letter with me right now.
Right, but that doctor of engineering talks about the test itself, not the tests that were actually performed. Like, you haven't had any outside tests from our own engineering firms that we've been utilizing to test the road? Have you
Yes.
you've had it tested outside of it? And was it passed then? Okay, well, I didn't see that included in our documentation.
It was passed by WSP Engineering, Doug Lapathy out of Benson,
Okay, and that was 2 years ago?
a year ago.
Okay, dokie.
You said you had a number of questions?
That's it for now.
Okay, and I think Councillor Kush had a question, and then Councillor Copeland.
So you got mine to Andre, if I can. What's left in the subdevelopment to actually have it passed?
Through the chair, Council Cush. So essentially in October 2020, we conducted the roll test. It passed the roll test. We did not do any other formal inspections. That's the only thing that passed to date. We did provide Mr. Stanley with the document identifying some of the deficiencies that we noticed, but as far as inspecting everything else, that never took place. I should point out also, yes, it passed a roll test in October last year, but given that the road has had no traffic, it's going to be sitting for 2 winters, prior to moving ahead, we will require another road test.
Did that answer your question, Councillor?
I'm just wondering, like, what has to be done in the subdivision for us to pass it administratively?
Through the chair, Council Kush, so we have to do an inspection of all the other outstanding things, so the ditching, the approaches, the grades, the side slopes,
So
back
like-
slopes.
Likely most of that won't happen until spring though.
That is correct. We, Mr. Stanley did request an inspection, but when I did show up, we had 4 to 8 inches of snow, so we couldn't see anything.
That sounds fine. Thanks, Mr. Bichon. Councillor Copeland.
Yeah, for me, this has been a bit of a confusing thing. It's been going on since 2009, and that's when the original development permit, I believe, would have been issued. So then I see in 2015, there was a redesignation. It went to country residential business district. So my question is, and this would be one that either Mr. Stanley or Mr. Bichon could answer. Was there another development permit issued with different specifications because the designation changed?
There was no change. I was denied 2 times. The CRB, I was the one that came up with this concept of a country residential business. Where my subdivision is located on Grove Creek Road, it's a heavy haul road, a 9-meter road. I was told to stop all construction by the CAO at the time for 2 years for them to determine if my road needed a wider road allowance and a wider 9-meter top, wider approaches, whatnot. When I did, after the 2 years, I made an application to apply for the first CRB. There was other counselors, people at the time who were granted CRBs. I was told when I came up with the concept, I would be the first one to have the ability to be granted this. It wasn't as such. So I was told the 3rd time to reapply again, waiting 6 months each time before I can make an application, which I decided at that point. I wasn't going to receive the CRB, I was told, so I went back to just the concept of a CR. So nothing's really changed.
Councillor Cush.
Through the chair, Mr. Stanley, another question I got. We were out there, we did a road tour, I think it was spring 2020. We went out there, we took a look, and a lot of what we were still talking about, the gaming rock and finishing up the ditching and the gas lines. And at that time, we were still waiting for the road test, which at least had been done, but a lot of what we're waiting on is still the same stuff from just about 1.5 years ago now. Given that this past year was basically ideal for construction, dry, a lot of warm days, not where you were really inhibited by weather. What's been the holdup on working on a lot of this stuff through this past spring through fall?
All the approaches were completed this year. Culverts cut, gravel, 50 tons of material put on each approach and packed. Except for the 2 approaches that I'm waiting on TRL to kind of determine if they need to be opened up and the gas line brought through. We only have a 30-meter right of way. We have so much of a utility corridor, and I can't push approaches right to the tree line until that utility's in. So I'm kind of waiting on them to determine how they want to go about doing this. So it's a little bit of topsoil work around the approaches, and the DBM rock to be put down, and 2 approaches to be gravel and a subdivision shape.
Okay, that answer your question? Okay, so we have 2 more questions, one from Councillor Prestich and then
Through
Councillor.
the chair to Mr. Stanley. If we did give you 1 more year extension, would everything be completed in that year?
Weather permitting, but yes, I can't see a reason why it can't be once TRL has ran their line through, I would have less than a week's work. Quite possibly days.
That answer your question? Councillor Wilhelm.
I guess my question is then, do you need a full 1-year extension to do this?
I can't determine, or I can't, 2 years ago, I got 11 days working on my road. Now that my road's gravelled, before, when we had all that rain 2 years ago, I had to wait 4 or 5 days each time for the road to dry to even get on it to do any work, and then it would rain again. And so I can't see the rain affecting a whole lot now. In Andre's talking about the road not being traveled on, there was probably 400 to 500 loads of material between my gravel truck and all the gravel being hauled in, stockpiled. The road was traveled extensively with heavy equipment over the last year. Complete this, I had to haul in all the material For the approaches, I had to gravel all the material. There was 3,600 tons of gravel hauled out to the subdivision, hauled on the roads of the subdivision. The road is extremely hard. It's over gravelled. I was told to bridge the road with 1.5-inch rock in certain areas, which really was an inconvenience. At the end, trying to grade the 3/4 into the road when you have 2.5-inch crushed rock being dragged up and down the road.
Follow up. So all of that work that you're talking about now was done before this last approval by the engineering company? So the work that you've done, that you're talking about there, that was to get it to the point where WSP would approve the road?
No, this was done after.
Okay.
So when they passed the road, I still had to complete the approaches.
Okay.
So just to clarify then, the traffic that you talk about, the truck traffic to bringing the material in, that was bringing the material in for your approaches?
For the approaches and for the road in general. The extra stockpile and extra material, there's over 125 loads of topsoil been put in the ditches, back slopes. It was all hauled in on the road. Just actually brought my equipment home a week ago. And this whole summer was just, I do all this myself. I don't have employees. So I have all my equipment, aside of hauling material from the gravel pit in town to my subdivision. If there's any future discrepancies or whatever, any portion of that road fails, which can't, I would have material on site to over gravel or re-gravel. To do a second roll test is, I don't see the purpose of it, to be honest with you. The road is not, when you're hauling in 3,600 tons of material with tries and tandem tries, and the road never dented a couple millimeters. The road is the best road in the county.
Sure, I understand. Any other questions?
Sorry if I may, I just want to clarify, when you say that you've done the approaches, are you talking to all 20 parcels or just the first 5?
No, all 20.
All 20, okay, thank you.
And so I had a question for administration, I guess probably Ms. Slutwig. So if I understand Mr. Stanley correctly, if you look at that subdivision plan right now, in order to get title in a phased approach, we're talking about the entrance, so lots 1, 2, 19, 18, and 17, which certainly makes sense from a logical, methodical approach as you're moving through the subdivision. But I do hear Mr. Stanley's request and concern that if a potential buyer came in and decided they fell in love with Lot 8, and they wanted to purchase Lot 8, what I heard Mr. Stanley saying is he'd like the ability to transfer, for example, Lot 17, that title process and that taxation process, to transfer that from 17 to 7. Is that something that has been done in the past? Is that something that you see as problematic?
Sure, sorry, through the chair. No, I've never seen that done. It's generally in a phased approach where you do your first 5, your next 5, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to change, when you've got something that's already registered, to change that to another area, I don't see how it would be even feasible or possible through the land title process, short of unregistering through land titles. Say, for example, Lot 1.
Right.
And then re-registering Lot 8. However, this particular subdivision, when it was originally approved, was not done on a phased approach. So the Municipal Planning Commission approved the full 20 parcels. In talking with Mr. Stanley, it was somewhat agreed upon that we would look at doing possibly the first 5 or 6 lots. Then he could, do some sales of those and then moving forward with the next. However, the legal opinion that we received verbally was that all conditions of the subdivision would have to be met. So that means that power, gas, or the utilities, roads, approaches, and everything, the environmental reserve easements, etc., all need to be registered concurrently as the full quarter in the 5 lots. And then when Mr. Stanley decides to do additional lots, he would have to reapply through the subdivision process.
For the next phase, for
the next
example.
phase.
So
Or-
coming
or
back,
lot,
pardon me, sorry?
or a lot.
Or a lot, okay. So just coming back to my question, do you think it is feasible then to register with land titles lots 1, 2, 3, 19, 18, and then deregister one of those lots and register a different one and include it in the phase?
To be honest, I've never seen it done.
And Your Worship, members of council, if I may answer that, is the Municipal Government Act is pretty straightforward in regards to subdivision applications, and the MPC would then have to make a decision whether or not to allow for that amendment to go through. Right, the amendment that is approved by the Municipal Planning Commission, who is the authority for subdivision approval, has to make those decisions. It's not a requirement of council, and highly unlikely that the recommendation, because you've already gotten an approval, you'd have to go through the amendment process again.
Sure. Okay, so thank you for that. What I'm hearing you say is that it's unusual, but it's not impossible.
Subject to the MPC approving it, yeah.
Sure, and any costs associated with registering and deregistering would be at the expense of the developer.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to Mr. Bushon, I don't understand why you need another road test. Let's say we approve the subdivision and he never sold a lot for 2 years and nobody drove down the road. Does that mean you have to do another road test again in 2 years?
Through the chair to council Prestige, in that situation, no, the county has assumed that road, so it's the county's responsibility, other than the warranty period for the developer. But given that there's a number of issues, the 3 of the last 4 falls, Mr. Stanley has come to get the roll test done with just a few days left of the season. So things are tightening up because of the weather, which will help the roll test. But given that it's sitting there for 2 years, 2 winters, and no traffic, representing the county, it's administration's job to make sure that we accept roads that are not going to be an issue for the county moving forward. So that's the reason we would be requesting it for this one.
Through the chair, Dollar. I don't understand it, because once you pass a road, it's passed. Whether, how many winters go through it. It's no different than our own county roads. You're basically saying our own county roads, if they go through 2 winters with nobody driving on them, you should be rechecking those too. So why, on this one, like, to me, once we pass the road, it's passed. It's done.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, if I may answer Councillor Prestige question is regards to, under the current standard, we have to accept the proposed subdivision in the conditions that are in the standards that have been adopted by this council. And you're absolutely right that if there is no traffic, once that subdivision is approved, right, and the road starts to loosen up because of the fact that there's not constant pounding or whatever the technical term is in regards to that, is it would be after the warranty period, our responsibility to ensure that road meets that the standard that we have accepted, right? So when an individual, let's say in 3 years, buys a property, builds a house out there, and then has some issues with that road, we'd have to go in there and do the necessary repairs or whatever. So you're absolutely right. But until that road has been accepted and passed, we have to make sure that that road meets the current standards. And we would want to prove, and I think Mr. Stanley said that there's a number of truck traffic has been over that road. So I would think that a roll test wouldn't be a problem in this case.
Councillor Prestige and then Councillor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to Mr. Bouchon, like, who is gonna do the roll test? The county or WSP?
Through the chair to Council Prestige, the county would have that roll test done.
I find that difficult with the difficulties we've had with Mr. Stanley and our administration. I would recommend having WSP do the roll test, not the county.
Through the chair to Council Prestige, if we were to hire WSP or any engineering firm to conduct that roll test, we would charge the fees back to Mr. Stanley.
Did that answer your question, Councillor?
Not happy with it.
Councillor Wilhelm and then Councillor Colgan.
Through the chair to Mr. Bouchon, what's the warranty period on the roads once we've accepted the road as acceptable, or whatever the word is? Once we've accepted the road, what's the warranty period on that and the requirements by the developer?
Through the chair to Councilor Wilhelm, and Joan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 1 year.
Okay. And that the road is still an acceptable standard within 1 year, otherwise it has to be retested within that specific time frame. Okay.
That answer your question. Councillor Colgan and then Ms. Slutwood.
Yeah, through the chair to Mr. Bouchon, then this is to add to Mr. Prestige's comments. I have a bit of difficulty with this is that if the county does the roll test, there's a cost attached to that, and we assume the liability of that, whatever that may be. So my question is that, would that be charged back to the developer as well? Because we're getting into a situation here where somebody has to be accountable to something, and the developer is going to end up having to pay for that one way or the other. So my question would be is if we do that roll test, is that charged back to the developer, or is that our cost?
Through the chair, Councilor Colgan, I believe the policy identifies that any additional tests that are done can be charged back to the developer. But given the history that regarding this subdivision, if we did it in-house, we would not charge back, but if we have out-of-pocket expenses, we would. I should also point out, given the ongoing history with this subdivision and ensuring I was not being overly harsh, I did contact 2 engineering firms, did not give any details. The location, the subdivision, just the circumstances of a roll test being passed, then the subdivision being idle for 2 years or 2 winters. What would they recommend? They both identified that absolutely they would get a second roll test done to ensure that the road meets the needs of the county.
Question answered. Councillor Coca? Yep. Ms. Sutwood?
I just wanted to clarify with respect to the warranty, it is a 2-year warranty that the
2-year.
county takes, yes.
I have a comment. You know, I've listened to Mr. Stanley talk about the work he's put into the road. I hear Mr. Frank saying that in this case, at least I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think what I heard you say was that it was likely going to pass a roll test. So I think we have a very confident developer that the road is going to pass. So for me, it sort of seems like that's going to be a formality. The roll test would be conducted as soon as weather was suitable. And in Mr. Stanley's opinion, it's going to pass with flying colors. So if that happens, then great. If it doesn't, then perhaps we can revisit and look at a third-party engineering firm. But am I right in assuming, Mr. Stanley, that you think that road is going to pass, no questions asked?
With what was voted on last year by council, that this road had 0 deflection, that's as hard as concrete. I can't speak to, you know, with this doctor of engineering, he states that roads could have deflection in Alberta. We're not in British Columbia building on rocks and have the material there that we have here. We have clay. Clay deflects, depending on moisture content that year. It could be, it could pass, it could fail. We have a year like 2 years ago, the whole country was underwater. I would see next year, or if we have a season like that as well, it would fail, because there will be deflection. In this documentation I have here, it states that you can actually have a road pass with up to 75 mils of deflection. The county will not recognize nuclear tests. If there are an issue on a shoulder of a road or something, quite possibly it could still meet 98% compaction with a deflection.
Right. And regardless, and so I'll just follow up my question, then I'll pass it over to Councillor Prestich. Regardless of deflection points, if the roll or if the road is passed, there's still a 2-year warranty period.
Yes.
That you're subject to coming in to repair if there's deficiencies.
Absolutely. In the past, I've never heard of, Andre said that, I asked Andre to come out and inspect my road or subdivision prior to the snow. He said he didn't have time, and he was told there will be snow next week. He waited till the subdivision was fully covered in snow. And then he stated that because he can't dig into the road with a shovel and determine how much gravel's on the road, he can't pass the subdivision. These things have never been done before. When people had their roads passed, subdivisions passed, it was that. They got to either complete the back ditches. When I'm done this subdivision, I want to be able to mow these ditches with my lawnmower. Ride on tractor and get this thing shined up nice for, you know, make a community of it. I'm not trying to, you know, sidestep any standards. I'm doing this properly, and, but I can only go with what I can work with infrastructure, and, I'm not asking for special privileges. I'm just asking for, you know, equality.
Okay, fair enough. And I'll get to you in just half a second, then Councilor Woodland. I don't know that we're under, I didn't see a time restraint, but we did start this right around 10 o'clock, so we've been in our public hearing for a little over 40 minutes, so I would like to wrap it up. So I'll pass it over to the two councillors, and then if you have any comments to conclude with, some Councilor Prestich first.
Through the chair to Mr. Bishwan. Every winter, your road freezes. Every spring, it thaws out. Every county road in this county does the same thing. That's why we have road bans. And as soon as the weather dries up, the road tightens up again. So I just don't see the need for another roll test. It happens every year. Does that mean in the 2-year warranty, you're gonna go every summer and do a roll test to make sure the road is good? I just do not see the need to do another roll test.
Through the chair to Council Prestige, as CEO Frank identified, up to acceptance, it's our responsibility to make sure that road meets the criteria. To confirm that, it's still gonna meet that criteria, that's why we're gonna request that second roll test. And I'll also take this opportunity to clarify Mr. Stanley's comments on the inspection. Mr. Stanley called me on a Thursday afternoon asking for the the inspection Friday or Saturday. I could not make it Friday. Saturday I was in Edmonton. We met on the following Tuesday. I did not say, I can't dig into your road. I said, I cannot verify the gravel. I can't verify the ditches, the side slopes, because everything's covered. So there was no digging in the road comment made.
Okay, just, so what I just ask is, address the chair, please don't address the presenter, but, Councillor Williams.
I'm kind of in agreement with Councillor Prestige. We have an engineering firm that has the data saying it's good. We've done a roll test. And besides that, I could be wrong, but I think he's just asking for an extension. I don't think he's even asking to bypass any of this stuff. So I don't know. We're kind of going around in circles, I think, a little bit. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for an extension, but maybe put some deadlines in place. Like let's do it sooner than later rather than like the December 2nd deadline. I think is maybe too long. Not to try and shortcut his time, but it's probably going to be frozen by then again. So maybe we should look at that and see what we can do with maybe putting some things in place.
So to speak to that, I appreciate that. You're right. We are kind of going around. So the recommended action is to accept the presentation. We have an agenda item later where we can dig into this. So, are there any other questions for the presenter, for Mr. Stanley? Seeing none, then I would ask for a. Sorry.
I'm just going to make a motion.
Fair enough.
Motion that council accepts the presentation of Mr. Stanley on subdivision application 2009 sub 18 southeast 28 58 13 west of the 5th as information.
Motion on the floor. Anybody wishing to speak to the motion? Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Stanley. So do we want to jump back and catch the item that
You have one more delegation, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
we have one more delegation?
In closed session.
Oh, okay. So we need a motion to go into closed session then? This is item 6.3?
It is, yes,
Okay, so we need a motion to go into closed session?
yes.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session to discuss land sale proposal under 23, 24, 27.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Anyone wishing to speak to it? Call the question. All in favor? That's
Should be one.
okay. So welcome back. I'd ask for a motion to accept the previous delegation as information. Mr. Kulkin?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the previous delegation's presentation as information.
Motion on the table. All in favor? It's carried. And somebody like to make a motion to direct administration?
I'd like to make a motion to ask administration to draft a land purchase policy.
Motion on the table. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, I do believe we need to come back then to 5.4, bylaw 580/21, meeting procedure bylaw. Let's call it consolidation. So does everybody understand what we're doing here? Are there any questions, any comments to it? Can I get a motion to give first reading?
Motion council gives first reading to bylaw 58021, meeting procedure bylaw.
Motion on the table. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I've been asked for a motion for second reading. Councillor Cush.
We have a motion, the council gives second reading of bylaw 580/21, meeting procedures bylaw.
Motion on the table. Anyone wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And I'd ask for a motion to proceed to third and final reading. Councillor Williams.
I make a motion that council proceeds to a third and final reading of bylaw 580/21, meeting procedure bylaw.
Motion on the table. Anyone wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And Councillor Prestige, were you going to give a motion for third reading?
Yes. Make a motion that council give third reading of bylaw 58021, meeting procedure bylaw.
Motion on the table. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And thank you. Okay. So we have item 7.1, business arising. We got a member at large application, subdivision and development appeal board. We had, so I understand we had one applicant.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, just if you do want to discuss that individual, we recommend that you go into closed session. However, I believe most individuals know this individual, and because we don't get a lot of applications for subdivision development appeal board, administration is recommending you appoint.
Anybody want to speak to the motion? Would you like to make a motion then?
Yeah. I make a motion that council appoints Dale Klein to serve as member at large at Woodlands County Subdivision Development Appeal Board, effective immediately to October 31st, 2023.
Motion on the table. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move into new business then. Item 8.1, subdivision time extension request. There are three different recommended action, and open this up to council for questions or debate. No questions?
Should we? Go ahead.
Just a comment, yeah, like, we've, from administration's side and, Mr. Stanley's side, like, we've, got everybody's got a lot of time, a lot of money invested in this, and I would love to see this go through. You know, if he's got maybe a week's worth of, work left to go on this, I would like to, see possibly one more extension, but with the, exception that that is the last extension. So, just the work has to get done. We can't keep dragging this out over every year. It needs to get finished. So I would recommend, in my opinion anyways, if we do another extension, that we at least make the stipulation that in the motion it's the final extension.
Councilor Wilhelm.
So we've got three recommendations here, which means we'd have to have three motions, correct? So should we talk? No? That's not correct? Okay.
Councilor Koken.
Yeah, through the chair to speak to what Dave just said. I think that that an extension would be in order based on some of the things that I read in here. But I would also like to see that if there is an extension, that it's very specific and very, very clear as to what the responsibility is there and whose responsibility it is. I would be in favor of getting that subdivision completed and get that off our plate.
Okay. I have a question for administration then. So there are three different recommended action. What I'm hearing from council is that they would like, rather than deny the time extension request, they'd like to grant another time extension request. But are you saying that you would like some specific time parameters around it? So what are those time parameters that you're looking for? Councilor Williams?
I'm not sure an exact date, but I think it should be before we would historically have frost, maybe like a September or something like that. So it's done. There's no snow involvement. There's no frost. There's no questions. It'd be done by then. And I think December 2nd, I read in here somewhere. I think that's too long. If there's only a week's worth of work, I'm pretty sure it could be completed maybe by the end of September even.
Okay. So Councilor Cush, you had your hand up, and then I'll recognize our CAO.
Yeah, I would just say the same thing. If we do the extension, I would just like it known that this is the final extension, and the work, one way or another, it needs to be done. We need to have the subdivision either, finished or done with. It needs movement.
Mr. Frank?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, I believe the act, and you'll correct me, requires that the time extension has to be a 1 year, right? So that's simply why we're doing it. I mean, the individual can complete prior to that. We also have a policy that under our standards, engineering standards, municipal standards, and I can't remember the other part, that no inspections after October 15th will be conducted, right? So the individual has to ask for final inspection before October 15th.
So just point of clarification, then I know Councilor Prestige has a question as well. So a motion to grant a 1 year time extension, is that 1 year to December 8th, or is that 1 year to October 31st?
No, it'd be December 2nd, based on the application.
Based on the application.
Always
Okay.
the application.
So the motion, as long as it just said 1 year, then that covers the requirements. Councilor Prestige?
Through the chair, just a comment. With everything that's gone on with this subdivision, the going back between the county and the developer, if we do another extension, I'd like to see the fees waived this time as a gesture of good faith.
Councilor Cush?
I'll make the motion that council accept a 1 year time extension for subdivision 2009 SUB 18 southeast 2858 13 west of the 5th meridian, with fees being waived and knowing that this is the final time extension.
Motion on the floor. Anybody wishing to speak to the motion?
This is a $1,000, sorry. This is a $1,000 fee?
Ms. Slutwig, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So just to be clear, we're granting a 1 year extension and we're waiving the $1,000 extension application fee.
And this is the final extension.
And this is final. Do you have that captured, Ms. Warden? Mrs. Warden? Okay, so motion on the table. Anybody else wishing to speak to the motion? Call the question, all in favor? And that's carried. We have another recommended action. I ask council for their comments on the next recommended action. So we have a request to deny, we had a request from the applicant to refund the last two time extension application fees, and the recommended action is to deny that. Councilor Cush?
Just through the chair to administration, the recent application or that he essentially just put in, was that already paid for?
Yes.
If I'd like to make a motion, the council deny the request to refund the 2021 application and refund the 2022 application.
Motion on the table. Does everybody understand the motion? Any questions to the motion?
Just a clarification, is that correct? Because is this not the 2021 extension and denying the 2020
Oh,
application?
yes, I guess, yeah,
Is the 2022,
2020, yeah,
yeah, so,
and then 2021.
yeah,
Sorry,
sorry,
my bad.
Okay, so let's back up again. So the recommended action should say 2020 and 2021.
Right, yes, thank you.
Would you accept a friendly amendment?
I'll accept the friendly amendment then.
Okay, so to be clear, we're denying the request to refund the 2020, and we're denying the request to refund the 2021, but we're not, previous motion said that we're not charging for the 2022.
Just for clarification, the 2022 has been paid for already? No?
2021.
Okay, that was
This
my other
The
question.
current one, sorry.
Sorry, quick question, just so I know, I think we're all on the same page, but just to make 100% certain, the application that he's just put in is 2022, right?
Yes.
And unpaid for? Because we're going into 2022, so
We're
that
going
would,
into 2022. But it's for well, it's based on the application date.
so this is the
2021
okay.
application.
So
for-
if my understanding is we would be refunding 2021 and not 2020. Because the application that's coming is a 2021 extension. Okay.
Yeah, I think everybody's clear, but could I ask you to read the motion, please?
I have that council denies the request to refund the last two time extension application fees for 2020 and 2021.
Could you repeat that, sorry?
No, that's wrong.
That council denies the request to refund the last two time extension application fees for 2020 and 2021.
Okay, so that's not the intent of your motion, correct?
Just like to speak to my motion there, I'm just on understanding, the application that we just granted the extension for is the one that he's paid that one, that would be the 2021 extension?
Yeah, it's based on the application date.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if I could just clarify my motion, I would like the 2021 application fee that he just paid refunded and 2020 not refunded.
But wasn't he wanting the last two applications refunded?
Yeah,
So is that
denying one.
2019 and 2020? Like, I'm confused.
No, 2020.
So he paid this year's, or like, he paid for December 2021, and he also wanted December 2020 refunded. Because 2019 was a different amount.
Mr. Frank?
yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of council, I guess in clarification, you're just wanting to deny the,
The 2020.
2020,
The other
yes.
ones.
that's all.
Part of the other motion.
So could we have a friendly amendment that states that?
Yeah, we have a friendly amendment to state that we are refunding the 2021, the one he just paid, but we are not refunding the 2020. payment. Is that sort of clear for you, Shannon?
Okay, so the original motion was to waive the fees for his one-year time extension. The previous motion.
That's
So
correct.
that's 2021.
So it's already covered.
So the next motion then should be that council denies the request to refund the time extension application fees for 2020.
Right.
Correct?
Because that was
Because
covered
the
off.
first motion already
Covered
took care of
Yes.
Yeah.
2021
Okay.
fee because you've asked
Just-
that.
Just for clarification, in the first motion, if he's already paid for the 2021 though, well, that doesn't cover the
Reimbursement.
reimbursal.
So
It does
by
though,
waiving it,
because
you would-
you've waived that fee.
Oh, okay, so
Joan
as
would just-
long as it,
Yeah,
Okay.
so administration would just refund that because it's been
Yeah.
waived. It's
Yeah.
waived.
okay,
So, point of order on the meeting. Can we discard the motion and can we have two separate motions, one that deals with the 2020 request and one that deals with the refund of 2021?
We don't have to do 2021, sir.
It's already done.
It's done.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, you've already waived the 2021. So dealt with, we'll refund that amount, right? When you say waive the fees, if they were paid, right? we would refund it. If they weren't paid, we wouldn't charge them. So that motion is passed, right? So Councillor Cush's intent is what I understand, is to deny refund of previous application.
Yes.
2020 in this case.
Okay, good. I think everybody's on the same page. I'm just not so sure that the motion is, so can you again read the motion, please?
Yeah, that council denies the request to refund the time extension application fee for 2020.
Motion on the table. Anybody wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, and we have one more recommended action, that council deny the request that no additional fees be charged. And we've dealt with that previously? Okay. So from a mechanical point of view, Mr. CEO, this recommended action needs to be dealt with.
Your members of council, Mr. Deputy Mayor, yes, we are clear in what to do. Yeah, and
Okay.
he's got 1 year to complete his subdivision.
Okay. Thanks then. That was a little bit cumbersome, and thanks for the patience, everybody. We'll move on to 8.2 then, airport event approvals. And we have some information in front of us. Everybody understand what the RFD is asking? Are there any questions to the recommended action? Councillor Cush?
Just for everybody watching, could we just get, ask Mr. Bashan just to take us through this so they understand what we're approving?
Absolutely.
Deputy Mayor, members of council, as part of increasing exposure for CYZU, the local airport, administration was approached to host Formula One air racing in June 2022. That involves planes coming up. They race a circuit in the area. The current Formula One racing takes place in Reno, Nevada. This will be the first exposure into Canada. Their proposal is that racing takes place in Windcourt, followed by the following weekend, I believe, in Grand Prairie racing. At this point, we don't have additional information. The first step is getting approval to host it at our site. We don't foresee any significant cost to the county other than some staff time dealing with the event holders. The second one is the 2023 COPA National Fly-In event. Administration identified that the 2023 COPA National event is going to be in Western Canada in 2023. The administration is proposing that we submit a proposal to COPA, which is the Canadian Owners Pilots Association. Once they put their request out, which is expected in January. The national fly-in involves anywhere from 150 to 200 planes on average coming into the area. It's held over 3 to 4 days. There's the pilots, the families, a number of manufacturers, similar to the RMA trade show, but on a smaller scale. An event of this size would be pretty significant for this area. It would be too big for the county to undertake on its own. So we would be recommending that we partner with the local COPA flight, Chamber of Commerce, Town of Whitecourt, and that we begin the process of preparing the proposal for COPA to consider. So the recommendation is that council approve the pursuit of both the Formula 1 Air Racing 2022 and the 2023 Copa National Flying Event at the county sent a letter to the 3 potential partners asking their support and assistance in preparing the proposal to host the 2023 Copa National Flying Event. I should also add that both of these were presented at the last Airport Advisory Committee, and it was their recommendation that this move forward.
Councillor Cush.
Yeah, I just wanted so everybody knows what this is about. I think it'd be great for the community. It's good publicity to get out there, especially for Woodlands County and even the town of Whitecourt or Marathon, anybody around us. So I'd like to make a motion the council approve the pursuit of both the 2022 Formula One Air Racing and the 2023 Copa National Fly-In event, and that the county send a letter to 3 potential partners asking for their support and assistance in preparing a proposal to host the 2023 Copa National Fly-In event.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. I have a couple questions to the motion. Does anybody else? No? So the first question I would have is the 3 potential partners that are referenced are the ones that you had indicated, the COPA board, the Chamber of Commerce, and the town of Whitecourt?
Correct.
Okay, and the second question was dealing with liability for the race. Would Woodlands County bear any potential liability?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, one of the conditions for hosting the air racing is we have to submit to NAF Canada, and the event is covered by the air racing coordinator. It's all under their insurance, and one of the conditions would be that Woodlands County is additionally named under their insurance.
Okay, okay. All right, that satisfies my, any other questions? Then I'd call the question, all in favor? And that's carried, thank you. We'll move on to 8.3, Mcdowell Road Closure and Invoice. If I could ask administration to provide some information about this.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council, Mr. and Mrs. Mcdowell applied for an initial subdivision in 2018. As a result of that, a number of issues were identified, one being that the county road was on the Mcdowell property. As we went down the process, through the process, in order to get the subdivision, the McDowells requested that a land exchange take place where the county would revert the undeveloped road allowance to the McDowells in exchange for where the road allowance is. The size of the properties is relatively equal. The McDowells paid for the survey, all the surveying, including the undeveloped road allowance. Council did pass a motion closing the road allowance. There was one of the conditions being that the McDowells paid 50% of the survey fees. However, given that the McDowells paid for the initial surveying, they are requesting that the invoice be waived, given that they spent the money to survey already. And the recommendation is that council instruct administration to write off the invoice sent to Mr. and Mrs. McDowell in the amount of $2,283.75.
Any questions for Mr. Bichette from council? Could I ask somebody to make a motion? Councilor Williams?
I'll make a motion that council instruct administration to write off the invoice sent to Mr. and Mrs. McDowell in the amount of $2,283.75.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Anybody wishing to speak to the motion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Move to item 8.4, the Veterinary Service Incorporated Program. Once again, ask administration to speak to this. I think it's pretty straightforward, but go ahead.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council, Woodlands County began supporting the VSI program in 2007 at the November 9th Ag Board meeting. There was discussion on the VSI program and benefits. The VSI program was started and continued to encourage veterinary services to be within different municipalities. And the VSI contribution is included in the 2022 budget. Recommendation is that Woodlands County commit to continued support of the Veterinary Services Incorporated program and forward a letter of support to Veterinary Services Incorporated 1980 Limited, as well as Alberta's Agriculture Services Board.
Yeah, and from what I understand, this is a vital program to help retain and recruit veterinarians in our area. So any questions for administration? Councillor Williams?
No, not a question, just through the chair to everyone. I'm on the VSI committee, and we have a lot of support from my residents for sure, that want to keep this going. So I think it's a great program. It helps out vets, and it also helps out the producers. So
Sure.
I think it's pretty important that council does support this.
So are you wishing to make a motion? Just go ahead and I'll speak to it after.
I just want to make a motion that Woodlands County commit to continued support of the Veterinary Services Incorporated program and forward a letter of support to Veterinary Services Incorporated, 1980 Limited, as well as Alberta's Ag Service Board.
Motion on the table. Anyone's wishing to speak to it?
Yeah, through the chair, this is just a comment, and I think the biggest part of this is that it kind of ensures the herd health, which is important to all of the producers in this area, and I think it's one that's very well worth supporting.
Sure. Okay. So anyone else wishing to speak to the motion? Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 8.5, winter operations. So the recommended action is that council forward this item to the Governance and Priorities Committee for review and discussion. Does anybody have a comment about giving you just a brief overview? As a new councillor, old councillor, however you want to term me, every year when we get our first snowfall, there's always questions that come from residents. And we had a significant snowfall, our first snowfall, and so there were questions coming to me that I couldn't easily answer. And so what I will refer when we do have our governance and priorities is just a process that will allow for easy information flow, potentially through our Facebook site, but just something relevant today that people can easily access that gets those answers. You know, when is my driveway going to be plowed? You know, all the answers that if you read through the policy, it's there. But you know, if we can just have something in a Facebook post that can be shared with residents, I think it helps our communication flow. And certainly, you know, we need to be careful how we're going to utilize that platform. But I also think it's got tremendous potential to help us with our messaging. So that was what that was all about. And if there's no other question or comment, if I could get a motion, Mr. Colkin.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that council forward this item to the Governance and Priorities Committee for review and discussion.
Motion on the floor. Anyone wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. 8.6, the bridge maintenance tender. Ask Mr. Bouchon to speak to this.
Deputy Mayor, members of council, the annual operating budget includes funds for bridge maintenance. Structures identified for repairs are prioritized once that year's bridge inspections are completed. A tender was put together, identified 4 structures that require repairs. Normally, the tenders go out a little bit earlier, but because some of this involves winter work because of in-water restrictions, this one is going out a bit later. But the tender was let out. We received 5 bids. The low bid was $271,550. There are 3 recommendations. One, that council award bridge maintenance tender 13672-22, award to Bridgman Services Limited for the tender amount of $271,550 plus taxes. And that Woodlands County Council approves a 10% contingency for the bridge maintenance tender 13672-22 in the amount of $27,155 if required. And that Woodlands County Council approves $62,618.90 in engineering fees to MPA Engineering.
Thanks, Mr. Bichon. Council have any questions for Andre? Councilor Koken?
Yeah, through the chair to Andre, is that the one that's straight north of Dale Klein's on Horse Creek?
There's 2 different ones.
Through the chair, Councilor Koken, are you talking Dale Klein's residence,
Yeah,
where he lives?
yeah,
No.
no?
This will, are you aware where Cemetery Pit is?
Yep,
It is, I believe, 1 mile east of there and north of Horse Creek Road.
okay.
Councilor Wilhelm?
Through the chair to Mr. Bichon, is it typical to get tendered quote like so significantly lower than the other ones? Like Bridgman, obviously, our engineering firm's backing them, but that's a significant price differences.
Through the chair to Councilor Wilhelm, there's no telling what kind of bids you're gonna get. There's usually one that's really high. Just the way it works.
I'm assuming we're taking MPA at their word that these guys are gonna do a good job. We're not just getting the cheapest one possible.
Here,
Mr.
just
Frank.
a comment. Typically, what it is based on how much work they have, right? So the typical high bid, they have lots of work and they just throw in a bid. And if they get it, great. If not, right? And then the low bid typically doesn't have work scheduled, right? And again, that's in general terms, right?
So, I'd just like to follow up on Councilor Wilhelm's question. I had the same, I wouldn't call it a concern, but it certainly jumped out. The engineering firm is, they vetted all of these companies and they have looked at references, et cetera. They're familiar with their work?
Through Deputy Mayor, yes, MPA Engineering is strictly bridges for the most part. They work with all these contractors on a regular basis and have given work to this particular contractor in the past and have never had any issues with them.
Sure. Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Mr. Bichon? Seeing none, if I could ask somebody to move the first recommended action. Councilor Wilhelm?
Before I do that, if we're gonna do all 3 actions, can we do them in one motion or do they have to be 3 separate ones?
It's cleaner if it's 3.
Okay, just for procedure, I'm still learning that. Okay, motion to council award the bridge maintenance tender 1362-22 award to Bridgman Services Limited for the tendered amount of $271,550 plus taxes.
motion on the floor. Shannon, I think you missed a 7. You'll capture that 7. It should be 13672.
Sorry, I missed that.
So his motion, originally, he said, council award the bridge maintenance tender 13622.
Oh, 7-2, yeah.
Yeah. So motion on the floor. Anyone wishing to speak to the motion? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Somebody want to make a motion? Thanks. Councilor Kush.
Make a motion, Woodlands County Council approves a 10% contingency for the bridge maintenance tender 13672-22 in the amount of $27,155 if required.
Motion on the floor, anyone wishing to speak to it? Call the question, all in favor? Thank you, and the third recommended action. Do we have some, thanks.
Make a motion that Woodlands County Council approve $62,618.90 in engineering fees to MPA Engineering, including tendering, evaluation, project management, QC, survey, and drawings.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Anyone wish to speak to it? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we'll go on to 8.7, Regional Landfill Authority Grant Application. Once again, Andre.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, members of council, at the December 2nd Regional Landfill Authority Board meeting, there was an RFP presented requesting that both municipalities pass a motion approving the support for the grant application. The grant application would be utilized to fund a study on changing the authority into the commission. And the recommendation is that Woodlands County Council confirms support and approves, although it says 1, it should be a joint application to the Alberta Community Partnership for the Woodlands Regional Landfill Commission study with the town of Whitecourt to act as a managing partner for the project.
Any questions for Andre?
I guess I don't know if this is covered, but what's the change from being an authority to a commission? What does that do
Good
for us?
question too.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Wilhelm, typically is an independent body that makes their own decisions. And for example, under the agreement, under the authority, this council has to approve the budget, even though they recommend approving the budget, the authority committee, right? The commission then approves it, and depending on how the commission is set up, it can be based on equalized assessment, it can be based on population, it can be based on a number of different factors, as well as the third factor is it doesn't eliminate your liability, because it still is shown on the financial statement as being a partner. It does reduce your liability as a municipality as a whole, because it can only deal with the commission items, the landfill itself, versus the under the agreement, under the authority, because I see you didn't like that answer, and under the authority, that the potential of liability of that agreement can be little wider spread if based on the managing partner who does the work out there. We could be dragged into something that they do, versus the commission is strictly based on the commission entities and their employees versus the town employees, right? Which is the present way the authority is set up.
Councillor Prestige, you had a question?
Yes, through the chair, Mr. Clement. I think this is good. It would alleviate a lot of the problems. Like, right now, the county, with the authority, we have 2 members on the board. The town has 3. We get outvoted all the time. So if it takes the councils out and it's just the authority or the commission, I think it would work a lot smoother.
Councillor Kush.
Just one question to administration. If we turn the regional landfill into a commission, does that impact, say, like our other transfer stations and stuff that feed into it?
Do you want to do it? Or I'll do it. Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Kush, the answer is depending on what the study would recommend, and the commission can be all-inclusive, or it can be just the regional landfill itself. So the study would then show what the best model going forward would be.
And so just to kind of, go ahead, Councillor Culkin.
Yeah, I think that's, what we're doing here is just looking to get some funding for the commission study. And so I think that's important because that's going to start to answer a lot of the questions afterwards.
Fair enough. Okay, any other questions to admin about the recommended action? If I could ask for a motion to that effect, please. Councillor Culkin.
I'll move that Woodlands County Council confirms the support and approves one joint application to Alberta Community Partnership for the Whitecourt Regional Landfill Commission Study with the town of Whitecourt to act as a managing partner for the project.
Friendly amendment. It's not one joint, it's a joint.
Yeah, I accept that.
You accept that? Thank you. Then motion on the table as amended through a friendly amendment. Anybody wishing to speak to the motion? Call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, you guys. Move on to 9.1, correspondent and information items. I just had a comment. These items, they were previously circulated to us, right? That's everything that we've been receiving. Okay. Question?
Can I just call a quick recess? I drank way too much coffee today. I apologize.
Can we make a motion to accept these and then we'll call them? Okay. Councillor Kush?
Making a motion to council accept the correspondence and information items as circulated.
Okay. Motion on the table. Anyone wishing to speak to it? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll call a quick 5-minute recess and then we'll come back to reports.
Like a negative feedback. If I need coffee, stay awake.
Okay, that's why I had to jet out to that last one. It was
Right now.
time.
It's right now.
So do you have your binder? Do you have the binder? Oh, right there.
And I have checks for it.
We're good to go.
Okay, we don't need Shannon?
No, and we record, so we always
Okay.
review if there's anything that.
Okay, thanks then. So we'll move into reports. So item 10.1 is council reports and questions. So maybe we'll go around the corner and start with Councillor Cush.
As far as meetings, we're a little quiet. Had the YRL board meeting here, trustee meeting, just kind of going over a lot of governance and, or I guess their executive board. I currently not alternate on the executive board for that. Other than that, it was just the RMA convention for that whole week. Lots of good workshops and stuff, and the guest speakers that came out of that. So it was very informative for the way that the RMA is actually kind of I guess trying to go with everything going on.
Thank you. Councillor Prestige.
I've had 2 meetings, and they were both the Landfill Authority meetings. Their budget will be presented to council here shortly. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet. In Blue Ridge, they had a family skate thing at the rink. It was very well attended. I wasn't able to make it, but something else we have going on. I think it's on the 18th. We have a dinner and dance happening in Blue Ridge. So, and some of us did go to the Kiera open house down south or north of Blue Ridge. Was really good, very informative. And other than that, that's about it.
Thanks. Any questions for Councillor Prestige? Go on to Councillor Williams.
Yeah, it's been pretty slow for meetings. Attended the RMA. That was really good. First time. It's quite the thing to go to. And then the other thing, we got a bunch of freezing rain. I actually contacted Andre about it. I got a lot of compliments on how well the snowplows did around the fort on the major highways. It was really bad, so I passed that on to him, passed on to the guys. So I was really happy to hear that in freezing rain. I thought the calls were going to go the other way, but it was good. So that's about all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Councillor Williams? Move on to Councillor Wilhelm.
I only had one main committee, or I guess it would be the panel, the Regional Forest Advisory Panel. It was a very short meeting. They were just giving updates on the zones of where they were forestering this year and what the various reports were. It was, the maps are so tiny and the presentations were so quick, I didn't have much of a chance to take it all in. It was all over Zoom, so I've requested them to send me the maps so I can actually look at them. Not that I think anything is a pressing concern for us right now. RMA was great. You know, we met a few ministers while we were there. I have contacts for them if you guys didn't get them. The municipal affairs, I have his, so it's good for us. 3 councillors went to the Santa Claus parade in town on Saturday. So me, Mr. Prestige, and Mr. Burrows, it was awesome. Great turnout. We had a really good turnout from county staff as well. I'd say we had one of the best floats there, but we didn't win any prizes, but that's okay. And then a few of the councillors participated in the World Junior Hockey Trophy Tour tournament on Sunday, and representing the politicians of the area, and we won the tournament, so that was awesome. We got to hoist the World Juniors Cup and got medals and celebrated a little bit, so that was a great time. And yeah, other than that, I think that's all.
Thanks. Any questions for Gordie Howe here? Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Culkin.
Thank you. I've actually been really busy, and I wrote this out because I did make a promise to my people that I would share with them all of the things I do and my perspective. So it's been a bit busy few weeks. The amount of information and learning has been a lot, to say the least. November 17th, I had my first MPC meeting. Was able to meet all the board members and begin that learning experience. Found out that Joan and her team are quite busy. It looks like it takes a lot of work to give those of us who make the background to make those required decisions. Our Economic Development Committee met. It was a very interesting first exposure to what all is included in economic development and the complexity of how we have to roll out different ways, not only to attract investment, but also to understand that the different demographics of our county, and this will play a role in our decision-making. It's important, in my view, that communication between our council and all the linked committees and boards is especially important. November 19th, participated in the tour of the Kira pipeline project. We toured the area where they're drilling under the Athabasca and past the site of the compressor station. We met the project managers and engineers for a question and answer session. This is a long-term investment and is positive for our county. Then November 26th to 25th, this was the RMA conference. Was there and took the required municipal councilors Munis 101 course on the 21st and 22nd. This course was helpful in new councilors understanding their role in local governance. Took in the trade show and discovered that there are a lot of connected organizations that play a role in what happens in our municipality. Attended the opening ceremony on the 23rd and was moved by the presentation by keynote speaker Jordan Tutu and the struggles he had as an Indigenous youth to get into the NHL. He talked about his successes and his failures and how his reconnection to the land and his identity changed his life. I could relate to the connection and the identity as my life. I have seen the change in our farming community and the loss of our connection to the land and the negative impact it has had on our farmers. This has invariably changed our communities and our identity. This experience will help broaden my view on council. The following panel discussions with the ministers reinforced that we have a lot to do as rural communities to keep a high profile in defending our rural priorities and our identity. Was surprised at the networking as I met a lot of old friends and made new ones. The highlight of the week, though, was getting our mayor a position on the RMA board. I believe that his work and leadership in the past 2 years was what earned him votes for the 12 municipalities he now represents there. November 29th, we were introduced to our draft budget, and now those deliberations begin. November 30th, I was at a regular Barhead District and Housing Board meeting. December 1st, I met with the Fort Assiniboine School Principal to begin structuring my role as school liaison, and I will be attending a parent council meeting this evening. And December 2nd was my strategic planning interview with our strat plan consultants. And in the morning, and had a Teams meeting with the Regional Landfill Authority in the afternoon. I was there because Councillor Burrows could not attend. December 3rd, had an electronic meeting with growth representatives and with other members to set the path with Rita and growth. We'll probably have regular meetings in the future once all the players are in place. December 7th, electronic Teams meeting with the Regional Landfill Authority again around budget. As representative council, we were not happy that we did not have a chance to review the budget, and we'll see that probably in our budget deliberations. I guess as we move forward with the operational challenges that we face, we all need to look at the bigger picture. I can already see that the experience of the last month has shown me that we will have to start looking at our responsibilities through a broader lens than in the past, and I believe we can meet that challenge. Can we submit this as written information then?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, just so that we record them, but we don't add anything to the minutes as that. But we have it as on tape and stuff.
Any questions for Councillor Colkin? Councillor Wilhelm?
I have a question. I forgot to follow up, and administration knows this, but you guys as well, for the people in your area, if you're talking to anybody, I incorrectly labeled my phone number on to administration. So when everybody was getting phone calls about poor snow conditions potentially, I was not getting any phone calls. And so just if anybody tells you that Councillor Wilhelm doesn't answer his phone, it's because it was incorrectly done. I always answer my phone.
That was not with intent?
It was not with intent, no.
Yes,
Just so you guys know, the correct number is now listed on the website.
Sure. Okay. I have to commend Councillor Culkin. That was a comprehensive report, and in written form like that certainly gives a good idea to the rest of the council and to the public what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And you had a busy stretch there. So I'll move into mine. I do not have a written one, and I feel slightly shamed after following the report from Councillor Culkin. But I would say that I attended Woodlands Community Services meeting prior to our last council meeting, but one of our mandates was to approve or ratify budget requests, capital requests from the various community groups. And so we followed up with that with the committee through email, and we have a follow-up meeting on Thursday. As well, I'm a member of the Woodlands Economic Development Committee, and I missed that meeting because I was in Edmonton at the AUMA. Mayor Burrows and myself attended on behalf of council to start building that bridge with our neighboring municipality, and that was a good experience. So one of the things that I learned was that there's a lot of common concerns. Certainly there are when you look at the resolutions, there are resolutions that are different than ours, but there were quite a few common ones as well. So that was good to see. Yesterday, I virtually attended a meeting with the folks from the Golden Triangle, and that group is a cooperative of snowmobile associations from this area, from Fox Creek and Swan Hills, and they're well on their way to clearing the trails. Of course, they're waiting for snow, but great organization. They're looking to have us host the next meeting. They want to have it in person, and it sounds like this facility would be the central location. So we'll Bert Roach and myself will work with administration to make sure that happens. As mentioned, the week prior to RMA, I was at the AUMA, and then followed that up with the RMA, and so that meant I was in Edmonton 7 out of 10 days. That was a busy stretch. And yeah, I want to follow up with on what Councillor Wilhelm had talked about the hockey. So that was a really cool experience. And as he said, we represented Team Canada, and we were able to find jerseys from the hockey community, and so we actually had Team Canada jerseys on, and won a hard-fought 2-1 game in the final against Russia. So we came through for Canada and beat Russia. One thing that I did want to mention, I'm going to refer internal communication to the Policies and Procedures Committee when we get that struck, just to get some clarification on when it is appropriate for a councillor to directly contact a staff. Hasn't been an issue. I've been able to have those lines of communication through our CEO, so it's working, but we all know every once in a while there are times when we need to directly speak to a staff member, and so I just want to get clarification. But it's not a time-sensitive issue, and I'm happy to refer that to the P&P committee. And the last thing is I really wrestled with asking council to have this next item added to our agenda as an emergent item, and I decided to wait and put it on our December 22nd meeting. But what I did want to report to council is that I had an informal meeting with the president and the vice president of the Whitecourt Indigenous Friends Society on the Tuesday before I came into RMA. And that group is well on its way to accomplishing its goals, and it's really its number one goal is they want that society to be a place of healing for their members, a place of education. For example, they'd like to bring elders in to help reteach the language and the culture and all those things that were lost over the preceding few generations. So I think it's got tremendous potential, and I think there's an opportunity for corporate partnership as well as partnership from Woodlands County. But I'll explore that in a little more depth at the December 22nd meeting. So, question?
Just a question with regards to the Indigenous Friends Society. Have you talked to them about coming to council and asking to have an official county liaison added to their group?
Yeah, well, you know what? A good question. Not in so many words, Councillor Wilhelm. What we discussed was for them to identify what their goals are, and largely their goal is to have a building that they can bring elders in and they can bring their people to. So they're trying to come up with a budget, and once they have a budget that would relate to what their goals are, then they can come with an ask. Right now, they don't really have an ask. They, in concept, they know what they want, but they don't have any numbers behind it. So, and at that point, then yeah, that's so informally. I'm kind of their liaison, but that just happened through a Facebook invite.
Okay.
So, any questions for me? All right, if I could get a motion to accept council reports and questions as information. Councillor Koken?
Yeah, I'll move that we accept the council's reports as information.
Okay, motion on the table. Any questions to the motion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay, thanks. So I'm reading this agenda. We do not have a financial report this time. Okay, thank you. And 10.3 is our CEO.
Chairman, members of council, the couple of things, just the RMA convention that I attended last week, and along with council, as well as dealing with the finalization of the budget and the revised budget. So on Friday, your binders are there as you go out the door, is the one for further discussion. The December 22nd council meeting, we will require a motion to either adopt that budget or to adopt an interim budget, and we can have that discussion on Friday with at the budget meeting for that, as well as the mums and tots in Fort Assiniboine have removed themselves from the school, which raised a couple of questions from a couple of citizens that phoned in. And so staff are now reviewing the two agreements that we have with the Pembina Hills School Division and the mums and tots. And they will be either coming to council on the 22nd of December or in the first meeting in January that we have. And the December 22nd meeting will be late, and you as council will be handing out some things for the staff if that are available to them for in lieu of their appreciation for their annual Christmas present. And I can go into more detail in case staff are watching. I can't tell you, expose that right away.
Give all the information out.
Yeah. And with that, that's all I have else to report.
So who gets to decide who's been naughty and nice?
Mm-hmm.
So who gets? Mr. Chairman, it won't be me.
Mrs. Claus, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for our CEO? Councillor Koken?
Yeah, through the chair to Mr. Frank. Yeah, I did have a conversation with our school principal on exactly those calls that you've probably been fielding. It's an interesting situation which has happened there before. It's happened generationally. It's happened in my generation, my parents, me, with my kids. There's some fundamental things that are probably going to be discussed. I'm thinking that if they have their parent council meeting tonight, I may be privy to some of that. The other thing is that I was asked at the time, which was very short notice, if the county would buy turkeys for their annual, because I guess in the past they got turkeys for their annual Christmas thing. So those turkeys have been purchased because I had access to them, and I would do that on the behalf of council.
So you already did that?
I have them, yeah.
Okay.
And it's not, it was just very short notice, and I know the situation down there. And I would do it personally anyway if it wasn't approved, so.
Yeah. And again, Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Koken, and this is all to all council. If you make expenditures on behalf of the county without authorization, because you have no authorization, you're ultimately responsible unless arrangements have been made. And traditionally, and I know exactly what Councillor Compton is talking about, traditionally I think we give them 3 turkeys,
Yeah.
depending on the number of kids, I
Yeah.
guess, at the Fort Assiniboine School for them to do their, and then they either reach out through the counselor, either counselor, to say that they're gonna do it, and then we go ahead and purchase them, right? And, or, I don't think we did it last year, because it probably
They had it.
COVID.
Because of COVID, it wasn't.
Yeah, more than likely, but I understand that, but just a caution, just so that you're aware, don't make, because you have no authorization other than this council chamber, right? So I'm, yeah, if you let us, we'll submit it.
I know that would be the case, but I also didn't want them not to have the turkeys, so.
Yeah.
I would accept that. That's not a problem.
That's fine, it's just, I'm just, again, just cautioning, you pick up the phone and say, hey, do we normally, and we've done it in the past where go ahead, buy them for us, and submit the expenses, as long as we know from administration.
Okay. So did we have a motion on the floor to accept the CEO's report? Can I ask for a motion, please, to Councillor?
I just have one more question.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Mr. Frank, have we gotten anything back about the legal opinion on
Yes, it'll
The
be
budgetary-
at your budget meeting
Okay.
on the 10th.
thank you. That was all.
He actually has today at noon to give me, but I don't see it.
So I can make a motion that council accepts the CAO report as information.
Okay. Motion on the floor. Any questions, comments to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? And that's carried. So we would, at this point, move into item 11.1, Committee of the Whole. So if I could get a motion to move into Committee of the Whole, please.
I'll make a motion that we move into committee of the whole.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Any questions? Call the question, all in favor? That's carried, thanks. And that's carried. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Going once.
Motion to adjourn.
It's Councillor Wilhelm. All in favor? And that's carried.